Hello, everybody. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and it's time to talk about Terminator Dark Fate again. Oh, man, this is a divisive topic for many of you. I posted my review, and holy crap, you guys... you guys have an opinion about this one. Before I even get to it, since I'm on my channel, let me use this as a reminder for all of you. Please go hit that subscribe button and then a little notification bell so that way you get alerted when I post my videos on YouTube, because for some reason it doesn't like to tell everybody. But anyway, this is talks about how this is easily the best Terminator film, is sort of what my take on this was. But I got a lot of flack because people are upset, thinking that this film just completely ruins the Terminator legacy. It's too woke with identity politics, and this, man, 142 dislikes to 139. That's more than half dislike to like. I actually don't get many divided comments, likes like that. So this was pretty telling. The comments were just through the roof, bro. Everyone was saying this is a bad movie. It kind of sets the precedent that important people get terminated in these movies, die otherwise, just replace them, makes the whole series pointless. Easily the best sequel since T2 is a bit like easily the best Star Wars movie since Episode 8. As far as I'm concerned, Terminator Saga ended with Terminator 2. What they did at the beginning of the film is unforgivable for me. It erased the earlier victories in T1 and T2. The I'll be back scene makes me think it'll be awful. Why are people so illogical in the comments? Good question. How is this a good movie in any way? It's an average movie and an insult to Terminator fans. Can you technically spoil something that's already rotten? Salvation was way better than Dark Fart. That's a good one, Jake Biomask. This whole movie is broken, but if you have fun, good. But man, it's crazy how divisive this is. So look, I wanted to do a reaction, not only to sort of react to that and give you my sort of comments as to why I liked the film a little further, but I really want to just ask the question, because I do respect the Terminator movies, and I love 1 and 2 a lot. I don't like any of the sequels, including Salvation. But I like them because of James Cameron and his vision. And I said something in my review that I will adjust due to a comment I read, which was that I called Terminator 2 a fluke. And when I said that, I meant it was just a fluke in that Hollywood sequels traditionally never work. It wasn't a fluke due to this commenter, and due to, I will acknowledge, James Cameron's a great director and visionary creative. So he knew how to fix it. He knew how to one-up what happened in Terminator 1 and adjust it enough to make the Terminator turn good, to make Linda Hamilton go crazy. All of that stuff lifted up the Terminator franchise, along with the effects, the action. It just was a fantastic film. Both of them are great films. People don't give Terminator enough credits, but it's good. And then Terminator 2 just is the one most people remember, obviously because it's iconic stuff. But both great films. So look, did we need another one? No. Is the reality. So anybody who's like, itching for it and feels like, yeah, and they're disappointed, it's just meant to disappoint. Too much time's passed, and it's hard to crack this code. But I am going to sort of defend the ending. I want to read some comments from the filmmakers and stuff before I get there, because I'll give you a spoiler warning, and then we will spoil the opening of the film, which is the opening. It sort of sets the tone as to why this movie exists, and I will explain why it's fine to me. And I'm going to do it using James Cameron's words, because again, how much James Cameron is in this movie to me is whether it's a success or a failure, whether we can have fun with it or whether we can call it a blasphemy. Because if James Cameron was very involved, then to me, look, I got to respect if he wants us to be there. Great. To be fair, he's seemingly been okay with like Genesis. He made some comments, but I've read he was just doing that as a favor to Arnold. He's admitted that. He said, I gave some great ideas. I love Arnold. It's so nice to have him back. He was supporting Arnold to make it. Terminator 3, he told Arnold to make that movie just to take the paycheck. Like, he's acknowledged those sequels he really had nothing to do with. And the few things he did offer Genesis, I've gone on record, I really enjoyed. And I think they took those small things and did them better in this movie. So that's part of the reason I liked it, and I'll get to that a little bit more specifically. And we will talk a little spoilers of the opening. But I will warn you, so stay tuned. I'm not spoiling anything until you see me wave my hand and warn you. But let's get to a couple articles that I read that sort of help answer this question of how much James Cameron was in this film. And I think it's important, if we're going to go there, that we start with sort of how the media is already sort of presenting this debate, because I find it interesting that a lot of them are sort of dark editing process was rough. James Cameron took control of Terminator. And then when you click it to this IndieWire article, James Cameron says Terminator Dark Fate editing was a bloodbath of creative differences. They're just really trying to create a beef that like Cameron's frustrated and that Tim Miller clearly didn't have say. And it's frustrating because if you actually go and read the articles and you read the specific quotes, it's just really creative differences that happen that they clearly came to terms with. But I think it's important to go through this so we can get sort of the tone of what's happening and what happened in this movie. They asked, were there disagreements during Dark Fate? And Cameron told Cinema Blend, I would say there were many, speaking about creative disagreements. And the blood is still being scrubbed off the walls from those creative battles. This is a film that was forged in fire. So yeah, but that's the creative process, right? I mean, my work with Robert on Alita, Robert Rodriguez, was very different. Robert loved the script, loved everything, said, I just want to make this movie. I want to make the movie the way you see it. And I was like, no, Robert, you got to make it your movie. I had the reverse experience with Tim, which is Tim wanted to make it his movie. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of know a little bit about this world. So I had that matter and antimatter version of the experience. So he's admitting that Tim Miller wasn't just being a yes man. Robert Rodriguez was clearly fanboying and wanting to just do whatever Cameron said. And kudos to him, because I did like Alita Battle Angel, and that says something, but audiences were mixed on that one as well. I think it was marketed poorly and it should have, and I wish there'd be more of those. But speaking and staying on this road of Tim Miller and Dark Fate, it's clear Tim Miller wanted to sort of be aggressive. That's the rumors we've heard about Tim Miller. I mean, he didn't come back for Deadpool 2 because he and Ryan Reynolds sort of had disagreements. I don't think Deadpool 2 was as good as Deadpool 1. It had moments for sure that I enjoyed a lot, but it was missing some of the grit of the first one. And Tim Miller is clearly one of those directors who likes to push his talent, be a little bit more aggressive, and have his opinions in there. And look, I think he's earned it. He's done some good work, and he could have done any movie he wanted, and he chose to do this one. So just because he's difficult doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. He wanted to make sure if he's going to put his name on this as sort of having every opportunity in the world, of course Tim Miller should have some say, and Cameron should have let him, and it sounds like they did. It sounds like this is not a beef, but just, as he says, that's the creative process, right? That's a key part. And then if you really go back a little bit further to sort of figure out, well, how involved was Cameron? There's another article that they did from Cinema Blend where Cameron talks about sort of his involvement in the film and talks about the editing process specifically. And these were interviews from a little while ago. But he said specifically about it. Well, I think I saw a rough cut maybe right after the first of the year. It was pretty rough. It was pretty long. It transformed quite a bit after that. I think David Ellison and I and Tim worked together to find the best film that could emerge from that. So he's admitting he was very involved in the editing process. He continues to talk about how the original cut came in and said, it wasn't a slam dunk at the time. I felt there was a lot of pathways that were taken that were unnecessary. I'm an editor myself, so I gave notes that were both broad and very specific. I continued that process up until about 2.5 months ago where we locked picture. I would say I never went to the set. I've yet to physically meet the new cast because I never went to the set, but I was very involved in the writing and I was very involved in the cutting of the film. And to me, the cutting is really an extension of the writing. So this is important because it really does confirm my speculation, and Cameron had a lot to say. Sure, he wasn't there on set. Tim Miller clearly took some liberties there and chose it. I didn't mind the look of the film. I thought it was gritty, looked practical at times. Some of the CGI, stuff still looks CGI because it's not real. But I thought it did a good enough job to distract me. It wasn't like I saw people saying how bad the CGI was. It was okay. There's some moments, sure, but it was better than most movies, I would say. But beyond that, the action felt creative at times, felt more kinetic, and the pursuit. I've said this, but the pursuit of the Rev 4 or whatever the hell he calls himself, the new Gabriel Luna, he just felt more menacing and scarier than Christina Loken or anything else prior. Obviously, Robert Patrick being the one you compare him to, he was a good follow-up to that. So overall, it had the feel of Cameron's previous films. It had seriousness. It had moments of levity that I thought worked, as Terminator 2 did. And overall, just finally had some more seriousness that was better. Now, granted, there are still problems with the film. I don't want to say not, but again, I'm focused on how involved was Cameron? Is this his vision? Because the biggest criticism of this film is that opening, which I want to get to, and then some of sort of the politics, the identity politics of putting in not only sort of the female leads, which a lot of people will say they don't have a problem with, but some of them do, clearly. They just don't want to talk about it. But there's one moment specifically about the female sort of empowerment that was very heavy-handed that I did acknowledge, and I still think could have been a little just do instead of repeat is sort of what I hate when a character has to spell out the politics. I agree with that complaint in films. Just do it. Just have the female be a badass. You don't have to talk about why the female is a badass, and that's important. When you say it out loud, it just becomes more Come on. All right, just do it so we can see good examples of it. So there is one moment of that I criticize. But, immigration stuff, all that. Let's get to some more quotes, because Tim Miller has also come on record to sort of confirm sort of his involvement and his choices in the film. One of which was he didn't want "I'll be back" to be in the film. And so people who were reacting to that line saying it's cheesy, he really didn't want it in the movie. He's like, we've done it before. It's stupid. Why are we doing this? And apparently they forced him to. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do the "I'll be back" thing, said the director. And they're like, Tim, you got to effing do it. I'll be back. I'm like, I don't. We've done it. But the pressure didn't relent. No, you got to do it. You got to do it. So Miller figured out a way to make it the line his own. I said, okay, well, if we're going to do it, it's going to be Sarah's line, and she's going to throw it away like she doesn't even give an effing care about it, which I thought really worked well. And honestly, kudos. I mean, when you have Cameron and other people and you want to respect them, you're like, okay, they're telling me I got to put "I'll be back" in. I thought it felt a little cheesy, but when I hear his reasoning and how he sort of, that was the mid ground, I forgive it a little bit more. Honestly, I do, because she does sort of throw it away like, who cares? Why? I'm saying this because you have to. And certain people are going to laugh in the crowd. They did in my screening. And certain people are going to roll their eyes. But now you know why it's there, and Tim Miller tried to fight against it. Cameron and crew wanted it. So that's telling. So again, Cameron involved and clearly got Tim Miller to sort of adjust that. Talking about sort of the more of the politics and sort of the overall worry of the film and the technology, etc. He did an article with Polygon. Tim Miller did, explaining sort of, are you channeling your own worries about America here? There's hope, which makes it a Terminator film, but they're asking about the immigration issues, societal fractures, technological doom, etc., the inevitability of humanity's demise. Tim Miller responded, I'm generally speaking more positively than Jim is about the future, about how technology. I also think that the only way out is through. We're not going to stop it. It's funny. It's kind of all came down to one night. Jim brought his artificial intelligence researcher in to speak with us because we'd been talking with all these prophets, and he had met with her, and she was very smart. At the end of this discussion, Jim said, I think what really has to happen is that before this thing gets out of control, we have to teach AI to be more human. And I thought, oh my God, we have to do the opposite. Look at the choices that we've made as a species. I wouldn't say that we have some kind of moral high ground when it comes to our place in the our universe. We could certainly design a better system than ourselves if we were given a chance. And that means, and that's what I mean by being a little bit more positive about the future. I don't really think about that AI will destroy us, because I just don't think it will care that much. I do think about this stuff at night, and I read a lot of nonfiction as well as fiction. Max Tegmark's book, Human 3.0, probably has the best sort of spread of the 8 possibilities for the evolution of AI. 7 of them aren't good, if that tells you anything. The article then presses, it's not just about AI. They illegally cross the border and wind up in a detention center. That's a pointed reference to make in 2019, which a lot of people are giving him a guff over. And he answered, I tried to walk a line there because it's a terrible situation, but I didn't want to vilify border guards. They're people doing a job. The system is the problem. And even the choice to do it really wasn't a statement. It was really a function of us putting the stories beginning in central Mexico and then traveling. It was just a natural evolution of the story, rather than me saying, or Jim saying, or anybody saying, hey, we've got to make a social comment here. It was really just an interesting story. I didn't want to vilify anybody. I had a lot of sympathy for immigrants and the whole process. So there he is admitting, whether you accept it or not, it wasn't trying to make identity politics there and make it about his beliefs on the thing. There is one line which I liked. The Terminator comes in to sort of save her in the detainee center, and she goes, where do you keep the prisoners? And the guard goes, you mean the detainees? And she's sort of frustratingly like, no, because they're all in cages. It worked in the character. It created the conflict. There are people who don't believe in that. There are people who do. There are terms for it. It was a discussion. It was a moment. It didn't feel like one way or the other. He was making a side, to be honest. So I didn't have a problem with that moment. I explained the one moment I did have, and that's where I think the only thing they could have done a little better, a little less heavy-handed, and it would have been better. And it's frustrating because these moments of identity politics and wokeness are being so distracted and blown up when the film is just not really about that. It's just, there's so much other stuff that happens and so many other character arcs, interesting ideas, specifically with the returning players more than the new ones, that I liked it. I had fun with it. It was fun. It felt more like Cameron's back to form, but with a little bit Tim Miller new visuals. So again, I liked it. Finally, going here, there was one other thing I just want to pull to sort of show you Miller's thinking versus Cameron's. They asked about sort of, the host was like, I love that part at the end of T2 where he gives the thumbs up. And Tim Miller goes, I can only say that that was not my favorite part of T2. That fact that it's yours is a symptom of your age when you saw it. Because when I saw T2, I was 27, right? So he's sort of blaming the generational gap as to why that works. But one of the first things I asked Linda Hamilton was, how do you feel about the thumbs up moment? And she's like, no. And I went, okay, we're going to be fine. Well, James Cameron, loves that scene. Many people love that scene. For me, it's iconic, I know, but maybe just a little too sentimental for me. So he didn't want to go that route. That's a Cameron thumbs up moment, which honestly, I can understand why some people might think it's cheesy, but as a kid, I liked it too. It was sentimental, I think, in the best way, and sort of it's showing the evolution of the Terminator, which is what happens in this movie as well. There's some interesting turns where how the Terminator evolves. So I liked it, and I think it's odd, without spoiling, it's odd because Tim Miller sort of does something at the end that feels similar, but I guess, argue that it's less catchphrasy and more part of the plot. But again, I don't want to spoil too much. I want you to see it and get your own idea. We'll do a spoiler talk at some point about breaking all this down. But those were sort of the feeling, the articles that I took out to sort of get a better idea of what Cameron was involved in and what Miller was involved in. And my takeaway still is, it seems like, for me and everything I'm reading about it, Cameron was very involved in the creative, from the script to the editing. He was there locking the cut. It's clear they had some creative differences. Cameron was allowing Miller to have some things, and Miller was sort of pushing back against the nostalgia stuff. He didn't want the sentimental nostalgia stuff. So to me, if anything, that's a good direction that he was sort of pushing Cameron in, to not feel like Terminator 3 and some of the other ones just became catchphrases. So good on him for making those choices. And to me, from everything I've read, Cameron's clearly involved in this. And the most telling piece of it all was sort of the final article I saw from James Cameron, where he refers to what the sequels would be for the movie, as I'm trying to track it down as I'm talking to you. Wait, it just disappeared. James Cameron himself had this opinion to say about the future, where the sequels of the film would go, but also where sequels. I didn't have the tab up. Sorry, bear with me. And here it is. Okay. When he was talking again to Cinema Blend, he talks about where these sequels were going to go, but he really hits the nail on the head on sort of the complaint that all of you have about the ending. So spoiler warning. I'll wave my hands again when the spoilers are over, but I'm going to talk about the opening of the film and sort of how that I think makes sense using James Cameron's own words, because if anybody's a Terminator fan, it's James Cameron. So I'm going to defend and side with Cameron on this versus all the fans who are telling me I don't know anything about how this works and why this doesn't make sense. So let's listen to Cameron, read Cameron's words on how this happened, and I'll wave you when the spoilers are over. Spoilers, here we go. I feel like one of the major motivations in this film, or coming back to the hopeful franchise, was to explore the human relationship with artificial intelligence. I don't feel we did that in Dark Fate. I feel that we set the stage, or we set the table for that exploration, and that exploration would take place in a second film and a third film. And we know exactly where we're going to take that idea. What we wanted to get in the first movie was this idea that it's just going to keep happening. The names will change, but the basic conflict is going to continue to take place until it gets resolved one way or the other. This is key. And I agree. And it justified it to me in the movie. I think it makes sense. So spoiler alert, the beginning of the film, they go back to sort of right after T2. We see a de-aged Linda Hamilton, young John Connor. John Connor's going to the bar. They're having fun. They think they've destroyed Skynet. And a rogue Terminator agent, young Arnold robot, comes in, kills John Connor, and Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, is distraught and crazy, obviously. The Terminator leaves, and sort of that sets the tone for the movie. And they explain that this was just a rogue part of it. Skynet was destroyed, and that's why I don't believe they've ruined the movies for 1 and 2. Yes, they sort of seemingly negate it, but it's all part of the journey. It's a chapter in this journey that is clearly continuing in James Cameron's mind, because the names will change, but the basic conflict is going to keep continuing. AI technology, it evolves. And this idea that, I don't remember what it was called, the new Skynet, but there's a new one. This idea that the future couldn't evolve to have a new version of Skynet, to me is just idiotic. Of course, someone would still create technology that's going to overtake and do this. If anything, it was kind of annoying that it was the same ideas. I could argue and agree with that. I could agree with that criticism. The film is definitely a retread. There's a lot of the same beats. I understand that. So, but pausing that for a second, Cameron is admitting he didn't erase it. It's just a part. Skynet was destroyed. They did it. And now those moments in Sarah Connor's timeline, which is the one timeline we're following, it's her time. Anything else that sort of happens doesn't happen moving forward. You could argue, well, wait, but if that's destroyed, then Kyle Reese couldn't have been born and John Connor couldn't happen. And yes, you could blow your head up with the ideas of time travel, but I'm going with the logic of it's her timeline. Whatever happened is this not gonna. It's gonna re-change. Doesn't matter. It still happened in her timeline. It's sort of the Avengers effect, right? It still can happen as long as it's already happened. You can't change the past, but you can change the future. So if someone goes in the future, they changed it by going back and creating a new timeline where this happens. And then that doesn't mean that the version of that parallel timeline can't have John Connor then die too. Look, it'll make your head explode, but I do think you can make sense of it if you want to. Or you can just criticize it and say, no, this ruins everything. Clearly, Cameron thought it made sense. I read some articles, Miller, and talked about all of that. There were tons of scientists and people, they really thought about the process. At the end of the day, when you're making sequels and it's the main plot point is time travel, you're going to have some obvious problems and conflicts. But this idea that technology would still change and keep going, and it's always going to sort of keep happening until you really find the core destruction of what this technology and the pursuit of the technology. There are bigger ideas that I do think you could pursue and see. That said, I don't need another Terminator movie, but I don't know. I'll give Cameron the benefit of the doubt if he really has a good idea, especially if he came back to direct one. But right now, the opening was justified to me. It explained it. I loved the arc where the Terminator, where that ended up. I liked the fact that, the fate theme made sense to me. It worked. It's what saved the movie for me. It did have an interesting idea of, oh, wow, everything does happen for a reason. I like that subscription to life. So I liked it. I think it was fine. I think the action was fun. It felt grittier and more intense. I liked Gabriel Luna. Mackenzie Davis was okay. Like, she's fine. She was kind of a weak Terminator, if you ask me. Why wouldn't you send something better? But that's sort of the franchise formula. But I think he's trying to go into this idea of, well, what happens? Can robots and humans biologically create different things is where I think he's wanting to go. I read some article where he's like, well, yeah, Terminator could have a baby. It could do that. So Cameron's clearly going with some weird human robot hybrid stuff that's going to, if this continues, go. And you know what? I'm down to hear what he thinks. But again, the point of what I wanted to say in defense of this video is anybody coming at Terminator Dark Fate, you're coming after Cameron. He is on record saying that's what he wanted, that there was a plan. The man who made the first two. Now, look, it's like special editions. You could say, why are you ruining the past? Just leave it alone. Sure. But Cameron's there. I liked it. I respect Cameron. If he's giving me a thumbs up, I'm going to accept it and say, you know what? I'm allowed to have a good time. So that's where I stand with Dark Fate. I think it is more Cameron than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I hope some of you will give it a good shot. Now that you know the spoiler opening, it's up to you whether you want to do that. I think it might deflate expectations a bit in a weird way, so I hope that it does and you can enjoy the film and you're prepared for it. But I liked it. I had fun. Spoiler warning is done. No more spoilers. The film opens this weekend, so I'm very curious to see what you guys think. Check it out. We can do a spoiler live discussion maybe this weekend. So tune in. Stay tuned. I look forward to your thoughts. Hit me up on social media to hear your Terminator theories. The civil ones. If you're just going to call me an idiot, see ya. Hasta la vista, baby. That's all I got for this episode. Thank you so much for watching as usual. I hope some of you enjoy it. If you didn't enjoy it, oh well, I'm sorry. Wait for the next one. We got Dr. Sleep coming up. I'll be reviewing that soon. I can't wait. I hear it's great. I'm excited. Jojo Rabbit. There's some fun stuff coming. So stay tuned for more reviews, more content, and I'll be back later. Bye, everybody.